From the 7,640 Philippine Islands to Fort St. John, British Columbia. My name is Ovian Castrelia Hill, and this is SITU, thriving in our new Bayan. From the first Filipinos who ever stepped foot in North America in the 16th century, to the first settlement of Filipinos in the 1800s, to the mass migration of Filipinos to North America after the Treaty of Paris at the turn of the century, Filipinos have been finding their way to North America. Some have even ended up here in northeast British Columbia. Fort St. John is located in the Peace River country of British Columbia, to the east of the Canadian Rockies. Here, winters can last up to 7 months, and temperatures can go as low as -50. The energetic city is home to the oil and gas industries as well as the forestry industries of the province of British Columbia. It's no surprise then why many come to this place for work and for the great outdoors. In this series, SITU, Thriving in Our New Bayan, we get to meet some of the Filipino Canadians who have made Fort St. John their home. These people have come in different decades, through different pathways and different circumstances. They have also come with various goals, dreams, and aspirations. While there are many differences, there are many things in common as well. Let's meet them, and by doing so, also see the life in Fort St. John through their lenses. In this episode, we will meet the pioneers. Rod Pagdilao came to Fort St. John in 1974 with his sister Renee. They were sponsored by their elder brother. This was timely, he said, because the program of being able to sponsor siblings was just about to come to a close.
My name is Rod Pagdilao, and I came from the Philippines in 1974 to Canada. And since I came to Canada, there has been a big improvements and changes around the city of Fort St. John. I came here when it was a little town. The population was probably around 4,000, 5,000 at the most, and since then it has grown a lot. And it's a small city, nice place to live. If you want to save some money, this is the place to come. Lots of work. If you're not picky, Fort St. John is here.
Kuya Rod said that there were only a handful of Filipinos at that time, less than 30. He said that you had no choice but to assimilate because there were no other options. Circumstances forced him to make friends, and that was a good thing. He added, too, that the town is very small. There are only 4,000, maybe, people, including the population of the surrounding areas of Fort St. John. He mentioned that the only buildings were the Mackenzie Inn, located in today's Stonebridge, as well as Fort Car Sales and the main post office. The family Kuya Rod belongs to has now become a clan, but they all hark back to the same origin story. Miss Teresita Bagatpatan is largely acknowledged as the first Filipino in Fort St. John. She first came to Fort St. John as a licensed practical nurse in 1967, and she was able to bring members of her family to Fort St. John. She first came to Fort St. John as a licensed practical nurse at the Providence Hospital. Mama Tess or Auntie Tess has called Fort St. John home since 1967. Through her generosity, she has been able to bring over family members who have become sources of great contribution to the fabric of Fort St. John society. Though there are many achievers in her family, one in particular is documented at the Fort St. John North Peace Museum. I'm talking about Lynette Pagdilao, who was crowned Miss Fort St. John in 1988. What a lovely lady and wonderful honor for the Filipino community. Lynette bested all other candidates to win the top prize. In the 1970s, the Canadian Embassy in the Philippines posted jobs in Canada and invited Filipinos to apply. This is how Bernardo June Salinas Jr. came to know about working in Canada. He and his friends applied for work directly to the Canadian employers. Kuya June, as he is popularly known, settled in Delta, BC in Greater Vancouver, where he worked as a machinist, the same kind of work he had done at the American Naval Base in Subic, Olongapo, Philippines. A year after, his wife Maria Lita Casipit Salinas and their boys followed to Delta.
There are lots of chances to come over here because of this Canadian government that they are looking for immigrant status during this time.
Circumstances and opportunities presented themselves. Kuya June, with much skill, was easily hired in Fort St. John. Throughout the years, he and other pioneer families often gathered, camped, and partied together. Other than friends and family, Kuya June has another family. That would be his martial arts family. As a karate instructor and as a Grand Master of Singkatan Arnis, Bernardo Fabio Salinas has etched his resounding presence in the city of Fort St. John. All this while his family has grown into a multi-generational clan, all of whom still reside in Fort St. John. The Fort St. John North Peace Museum unearthed information about another Filipino who came to Fort St. John in the late 60s. Her name was Consuelo Tongol. What we know was that Connie was hired as a teacher and taught at the Bert Bowes Secondary School, as it was called then. Miss Tongol taught home economics, which is why it's not surprising that a dress she had sewn is part of the collection of the Fort St. John North Peace Museum. The bridesmaid's dress is intricately embroidered and is made of materials commonly used in Filipino costumes. In Connie's entourage photos, it's seen that her groom and his groomsmen are wearing barong Tagalog, a Filipino formal attire for gentlemen. I invited Lorna Niffler, who is the Filipino with the largest collection of Philippine costumes in Fort St. John, to take a look.
It very sturdy material and very. The material, the base material itself is what we call a teturon in the Philippines, which was a very common one used as uniform or any dress of its color of your choice that is available. And this was the kind of style of material that's used by dressmaker all the time, including making stuff like this, like for wedding or gown. But as far as the embroidery thing, it's kind of an application. It's called applique because this is embroidered first by a machine and then cut embroidered into this teturon material, and then afterwards doing it, she shaped it into the gown she wants or the style.
Virgilio Miranda was hired to work in Toronto. After he had sold his property in Cavite, Philippines to go on the trip, he was told that his job was no more. He lodged a protest at the Canadian Embassy, who found for him another position, and it happened to be in Fort St. John. Kuya Ver arrived in 1977 and was away from his family for 5 years before being reunited again. One of the challenges of those days was communication. Kuya Ver had a very difficult time communicating with Ate Tessie, who was still in Cavite, Philippines. Ate Tessie would have to go to PLDT and make collect calls to Kuya Ver. It was very expensive at that time, costing $20 each time. The alternative, of course, was to use snail mail via post. It took much longer, but it was also much cheaper. Other challenges included bringing in rice and other food items to Fort St. John. Many people would go to the big cities and buy multiple sacks of rice to bring back to Fort St. John. Or they would ask friends and family to buy Filipino goods in the big cities and have them sent via Greyhound bus. Virgilio and Tessie Miranda raised their children in Fort St. John and still live here today. Originally from Castillejos, Zambales, Ate Marge first arrived in Canada in 1967. Her destination, however, was in Halifax, Nova Scotia, where she was first hired.
Ang pansit namin noon, spaghetti noodle. At saka yung mga tuyo namin, yung mga dry food na hiring, mga ganon.
2 years after, she decided to move to Dawson Creek, BC, where she was promised a higher paycheck. It was at that time that she married Sergio Turbella and bore her 2 children. In 1977, the Turbella family moved to Fort St. John, where they have lived ever since. Margarita Turbella retired after having served the health community in Fort St. John for many years, while her husband, Sergio Turbella, retired from working at the Northern Lights College, where he was held with high regard. It is said that Sergio Turbella's position when he was still working is fulfilled by 3 positions today. These pioneers, through their hard work, grit, and perseverance, are instrumental in establishing the positive reputation the Filipino Canadians They are also the pioneer members of the oldest Filipino Canadian society in the Peace region, that is the North Peace Filipino Canadian Association, established in 2007. In the next episodes of SITU, Thriving in Our New Bayan, we will meet more Filipino Canadians in Fort St. John. In each episode, we will get to know them in depth, their stories and their journeys to our great country, Canada, and the city we call home, Fort St. John. Once again, this is Ovian Castrillo Hill, thriving in Fort St. John.